Welcome to Sailing Sweet Ruka. I'm Kate, this is Curtis, and Roxy the dog. We left the east coast of the United States with hopes of sailing around the world via Cape Horn and the Cape of Good Hope. With Cape Horn behind us, we sailed up the fjords of Patagonia and then spent the austral summer cruising the northern fjords to enjoy all that we had passed over in the winter. We are summarizing this trip to get you caught up closer to real time, but we just had to show you what all of the other YouTube channels are missing. Join us as we show you the remainder of our route and highlight some of the most epic sailing, people, and views in the world. And I leave Sweet Ruka behind while Curtis finally gets a chance to solo sail Sweet Ruka some quality miles. How will he fare without me? Last week we sailed to amazing hot springs, waterfalls, and even braved icebergs and bergy bits in the world's northernmost tidewater glacier. It was time to make our way back north, but not without a few amazing stops along the way. We are updating you from our passage crossing the Pacific as we get you closer to real time, and begin this episode leaving the San Rafael Glacier after visiting with fellow cruising boat Candine from Canada. We've left the lagoon and have entered the river on our way to anchor for the night, and make our way north. Alright, so it was a whirlwind trip out with the current. I think we were motoring at 1.11 knots.
Yeah, there was tons of current, and we had to dodge little icebergs and bergy bits. It was actually really cool, a good adrenaline-fueled driving there. And then we were able to set the sails and make it the rest of the way back out of the fjord, where we took another little rest and shelter break.
Actually, if I remember correctly, we unfurled the jib, the wind was with us, and I passed out from exhaustion of being in the sun and staring at ice and water for hours and hours.
Yeah, it was a long, long day. It was a long day. I think it was 3 hours on the way in, 6 hours in there, and then I think 3 hours about on the way back out. So a solid 12-hour day of really active sailing.
Yeah, so we met back up together at Bahia Sisquelan and then headed out to the next anchorage called Caleta Punta Lynch, but not before Tim and Curtis had a little race off.
Oh yeah, we did. So we decided to race a little bit towards Porto Aguirre. Yeah, we both left the anchorage at the same time. We both set our sails.
Well, we set our sails, and then he felt like, well, shoot, I might as well set mine now too. If he's gonna sail, I have to sail. And so they decided that they were gonna have a little competition.
Yeah, so we started going under sail. The wind died. I think Tim turned on his engine and moved up away from the Sweet Ruka, but I was bound and determined to catch him under sail only. And I worked my tail off, tacking up the fjords.
Yeah, it was not the most relaxing for me, and I was like, oh my gosh, these two knuckleheads, but we had a great time sailing, and as much as it would have been easy to just turn on the motor, go straight to the anchorage, we had a blast with the canvas up, and I think Curtis even flew the drone and got us two boats together, so that was a lot of fun.
Yeah, that was super cool.
We enjoyed the anchorage together before going our separate ways. Candine decided to hightail it back to the main town in the area, Porto Aguirre, while we sailed to another remote anchorage, once again upwind and flat water, just enjoying having the canvas up in the warming temperatures. We anchored and tied to the trees just south of Porto Aguirre in the caleta called Puerto Nuevo. The shelter from the winds was amazing, and we slept soundly after our adrenaline-filled passage to the glacier. The next day, we met back up with Candine in the town of Porto Aguirre, where we created a plan to celebrate the upcoming holidays together and swap stories about navigating the icebergs. While we were were in Porto Aguirre, we met back up with Candine and headed over to this little secret anchorage called Isla Hilda, where we celebrated Christmas together and went for this amazing 360 view hike. We were assured the owner of the island had a strong mooring that he didn't mind sharing with cruisers, and that a carved trail would make for a fun-filled day. We shared the mooring and made extra secure by tying to the trees before heading to the shore with Roxy in search of the trailhead. The day brought with it the warm summer austral heat as we made our way to the 360 view summit and eventually the other side of the island, where we stopped and enjoyed the beautiful warm day, unlike what we have back home this time of year in the Midwest. Roxy was certainly living the dream off-leash. Back on Sweet Ruka, we shared delicious seafood we traded with fishermen to celebrate the end of an amazing Christmas day. After that, we went back to Porto Aguirre with Candine and some other boats that were there and celebrated New Year's, where all the local fishermen, including ourselves, shot us some flares.
Yeah, we had a lot of fun at New Year's in the marina at Porto Aguirre. Thanks a lot, Jaime, for letting us have a good little New Year's Eve party there.
Yeah.
And yeah, we definitely got to test off some of our expired soulless parachute flares, and well, they worked just fine.
Yeah, no fireworks on the island. Literally everyone did flares, and I don't think the Armada minds, because that's really all there is to use. After Porto Aguirre, we started to make our way to Isla Kent.
Isla Kent, which was an absolutely amazing expedition. It was very, very difficult to get to. We had to battle and battle to get there, but finally we staged at a little anchorage just before the canal, so we could wait for a very calm weather window to motor our way through this canal, because we'd already been turned back sailing.
Yeah. I think the name was Caleta Lampaso. Canal Ninualak had turned us away once before with conditions that caused nearly impenetrable standing waves that surely would not be good for the boat long term. All forecasts had said 10 to 15 knots, but were actually 30 to 40 with 5 knots of current against the gusts. So this time we anchored right at the base of the channel so we could monitor the conditions in real time, waking up before dawn to take Sweet Ruka down the funneling waterway when the winds were light and the current favorable to arrive at the entrance of Isla Kent. But once we got to the island, then we had to enter into this very narrow and uncharted fjord, and that was super fun and really crazy.
In case you don't know what that beeping is, that's our wind alarm. The wind is starting to die a little bit, and
We're going the wind speed almost.
yeah, we're actually sailing at 5.7 knots and 6 knots of wind, which is really, really good. We've got our G3 Jenniker up.
We're going faster than the wind. We're going
Faster than the wind. But yeah, we've got our G3 Jenniker up in our full mainsail right now, and Sweet Ruka is just sailing absolutely amazing under the autopilot. As you can see, we're not even driving, but the wind is starting to die, and what happens is sometimes we'll get a little flop in a wave, and that'll push the wind straight back up our masthead, and that will stop the anemometer from going or drop its wind speed down. And we have a wind speed alarm that's set at 2 knots of wind. So as soon as the wind shows it's dropping less than 2 knots, throws off an alarm, gets us up here and makes us say, hey, trim the sails, look around, make sure the boat doesn't stop moving. So anyway,
All right.
Back to Isla Kent.
Yeah, I was just saying that it was definitely adrenaline pumping. I took another spot on the bow as we entered Isla Kent. Most of it was uncharted. We had some friends there tell us, give us some tips that have been there before. You know, stay to this side of this rock or this island, and you know, hug this shoreline and that kind of thing. So we made it through. It was absolutely gorgeous, and a huge relief to make it down that long channel. And once we got to the anchorage, wow.
Yeah, the entrance into Isla Kent was just absolutely amazing. And then we dropped our anchor and turned the engine off, and then you could hear the ocean crashing on the other side. So it was time to go ashore and do a little bit of exploring.
Yeah, I'd say the island is almost shaped like a Pac-Man. So you've kind of got this round shape with this fjord that kind of cuts it in half, and there's just this narrow little piece where the open Pacific Ocean is right on the other side with this amazing, amazing beach. Boats that have been there before have put their names on signs and hung wine bottles and shells and things, and so it's sort of this like almost Cape Horn sort of rite of passage that, you know, you just know that it was a long trek and a difficult voyage to get there, and then hearing those waves crashing at night and this just uninterrupted night sky with no light pollution was just an amazing, amazing experience. And we hope to make an Isla Kent episode someday as well.
Yeah, we did a lot of filming there, a lot of exploring. We wanted to go through all of the different rumors and myths about the island. So we looked for aliens, we looked for signs of people or civilizations. We listened on the SSB radio to see if we could hear any radio transmissions.
We looked for gold too.
We turned on the radar. Yeah, we looked for gold, hidden Nazi gold, like everything that we could possibly find or try and think of. We tried to search for it, but in the end, well, we're gonna have to leave that to another special that we'll make sometime later, where we have all this footage from Isla Kent. We can show you everything about the island. There is some really mysterious stuff that's going on there, and so we'll save that one for later. But we did finally put up our sign there, so we left our presents for other people that came, as is customary there, and then
we went back out the fjord the way we came as best we could, and back down the channel, and I think we sailed down the channel.
sailed.
Hanging up our sign made reaching the harsh outskirts of the wilderness of Isla Kent feel like the completion of another marathon. Another challenge we overcame. It was a relief to go with the wind, and we watched many fishermen take the good weather opportunity to head out the channel and likely to the nearby salmon farms or into the open ocean. We put some serious miles under our keel as we sailed from sunup to nearly sundown before arriving to the next anchorage. Started to head back north, and we stopped at this little place called Caleta Arboles, where I just captured the most beautiful sunset while I took Roxy to shore. We'll drop some pictures there, and we just decided to spend the night there. But the craziest thing was, we left in the morning and the dolphins were jumping out of the water alongside the boat. It was just amazing, almost like they were looking at us and greeting us as we were leaving the anchorage. It was amazing, amazing.
Yeah,
and then,
those were some of the best Patagonia dolphins that I'd seen.
Yeah. Oh, we're gonna miss the dolphins. They were just, every day we're out here in the Pacific so far, I'm like, where are my dolphins? We haven't had dolphins yet. We're gonna miss those guys.
There were actually some flying fish that jumped just over there while we were filming.
Yeah, flying fish, not the same as a dolphin. I love the dolphins. Anyways, so after this Caleta Arboles, we headed to...
I have no idea where we headed to, but it was time to keep working our way north.
Yeah.
We had to get north.
I think we went to...
Because our visas were
I know
running
where
out.
we went. We went from Caleta Part, we crossed Gulf of Corcovado and anchored in the night at
we
Isla
went
San
through
Pedro.
Malinka.
Yep, we went past Malinka and went to Isla San Pedro and anchored there in the night. at night, which was a little freaky, outside of the island in this big like little sandbar that everybody travels around, and it was a little, we were just praying that we weren't going to get hit by a fishing boat in the middle of the night anchored out there, but there were some other boats anchored there too.
This was one of my made up anchorages that I just looked at the chart and decided this would be a good place to anchor that's not in the book.
Yeah.
But those usually work out pretty well. I end up finding some good little secret spaces, and then the locals come over and say, how did you know to anchor here? I'm like, I don't know, I looked at the chart.
Yeah.
But yeah, we had quite the sail across Gulf of Corcovado. After leaving Malinka, we went out into the Gulf, and the call was for some pretty strong breezes that was going to end up dying and then become a northerly, so we wanted to get across while we could. And so we were reaching across, and maybe, you know, I think maybe up to 20 knots of wind, and we ended up passing a commercial fishing boat. We were reaching along at 10 or 11 knots, and I just remember this fishing boat or commercial you know, salmonera boat just like looked over, and they had like 2 or 3 guys like puking off of the side because they were getting seasick, and they just watched this sailboat go by them, and they were just like, what the heck is going on?
Yeah.
So
I remember now.
it was a super cool trip across, definitely a little rough, but yeah, and then we anchored in Isla San Pedro.
Yep.
Yeah.
But so we were just there for the night, and then the winds kind of did a weird thing, so that's why we ended up dropping the anchor there when we did. It was still light out when we planned to anchor, but then the winds did a totally weird thing that wasn't forecasted, so we anchored outside the island, which happened to be at night. And we decided that day that we were going to have a little bit more fun exploring Chiloe, because we weren't sure what we were going to do next. And we ended up in this really cool town called Castro. Tell us more about how we got there, Curtis.
Yeah, so we decided to sail up to Castro from Isla San Pedro, and we just had this wonderful sail up the coast of Chiloe. Absolutely beautiful area to sail in.
We sailed the very indirect route and into the long fjord to the large tourist town of Castro, famous for the houses on stilts that were built due to the very large 20-foot tides that occur. It was a culture shock from all the wilderness we were used to, but a welcome change as Curtis prepared to leave Sweet Ruka behind.
We needed to go to Castro to reprovision after our 2 big expeditions, and it's a big city with a lot there to do, a lot of local arts and crafts, and just a really good city to walk around and explore, a really big ancient church. We also needed to get to Castro in order for me to catch a bus to go to Bariloche, Argentina to renew my visa, because we spent so long sailing down there that my visa was going to expire. So my only choice was to leave the country of Chile and then come back. So I hopped on a bus to go to Bariloche, which we'll show you right now, and I left Kate all by herself on the boat.
Yeah, I think it was about an 8-hour total bus trip from Castro all the way over into Bariloche, Argentina. And yeah, he was just gone for a few days while I stayed with the boat and Roxy at anchor. We also, while we were in Castro, met this amazing couple, Danny and Emily, aboard the boat Nomad, which they sailed to Chile from Florida. So we had fun getting to know those guys a little bit, and I got to hang out with Emily while Curtis was gone. And then when Curtis came back, I needed to renew my visa. But as you saw in the last episode, Curtis got to fly home, do a little work, and while he was there, he got to see family. Well, it was my turn to see family and also get some more boat parts.
Yeah, one of the best ways to get boat parts back to your boat when you're traveling around the world like this is to actually put them in your carry-on and bring them directly back. So Kate had a 2-part mission to see her family and get more parts for the next refit video that you're going to see coming up of what else we did to make Sweet Ruka ready to go sailing.
So while I flew back home for the first time in 2.5 years, Curtis couldn't just sit there on anchor while I was gone for quite a while. So he decided to go on his own little journey. Tell us about it, Curtis.
Well, what do I do with a boat just sitting in Chile? alone? Well, I'm gonna go sailing. So on the boat Nomad, our friend Daniel is also a naval architect and is working on designing and developing and selling his own type of boat, which is built in Chile. The boat is called Lobo. So the first thing that I did was hop aboard and take a sail on this gaff rig wooden Chiloe boat, which was built entirely out of local materials. And I had a great time. I was actually really surprised about just how well this boat sailed. We ended up sailing the Lobo up past the Palafitos, or the stilt houses in Castro, which are really famous. It was a really, really good time, and I was really impressed with the way that the boat performed. So much so that Daniel invited me to sail along with the rest of the Chiloe rally, which is all these small little wooden boats that were going to cruise up the coast of Chiloe. So Sweet Ruka didn't quite really fit the mold of this rally, but they allowed me in anyway, and I had a great time sailing up with them.
It was Curtis's chance to set the sails and give the solo sailing thing a try. The 46-foot Sweet Ruka is set up great for double-handing, but surely Curtis and Roxy can pick up the slack. Single-handed sailing is something Curtis has always enjoyed doing, often taking his Melgus 24 out in the Great Lakes for a solo sail. But the great thing about solo sailing in this rally is being surrounded by other boats and new friends, knowing he will get to experience the camaraderie ashore. Don't worry, I asked Curtis and he still enjoys double-handing with me more than solo sailing, so my role on the boat is safe. For now anyway.
Our next stop was Dalkaway, which was this magnificent little town where Roxy and I anchored off in a lot of current, and I was able to take Roxy for a nice long walk down the beach and stretch her legs. So after Dalkaway, we set sail for a little island called Machuque. There's a small archipelago in this area of the island of Machuque, and we anchored off for the first day. At our first stop, we had lunch with a local farmer and his family at his house, where they made us an amazing caranto. So basically, to make a caranto, you dig a big pit, you put a fire in with a bunch of rocks, you get it really hot, you move the fire away, then you put in all of the food. You put in the clams and churritos and all the local seafood. You also put on steaks and sausages and potatoes, and then you cover everything with these leaves of this local plant. These are really big leaves. They cover the whole thing up and they let it sit for about half a day. They start this in the morning and then you come in for lunch, and wow, it was amazing.
Oh, I was sad to miss that one.
Yeah, the local way to do it was you sit down on logs next to the fire pit, and then you just eat right out of the fire pit. You have a conversation. It was absolutely phenomenal. My Spanish was stretched to its absolute limit, but had a really wonderful experience. Then after this, we sailed to the main anchorage of Machuque as the weather was turning a little bit bad. Roxy and I were able to walk around the island for a little bit. We visited a local museum, which had a lot of cool local sailing history of the area. And this is just another amazing stop, glorious anchorages, and a really, really cool place on the planet to be. After this, we sailed off to Kemchi, was our next stop, where we visited a small local sailing school, and then we also visited and anchored in the main town for a celebration of sailing in the area, where all of the people with the small Chiloe boats took all kinds of people from the town, young and old. They took everybody in the town sailing, and it was just an absolutely amazing display of local sailing culture, because the way that people used to travel before there were powerboats around all these little islands and archipelagos of Chiloe was only by sailboat, which had to have been just amazingly difficult. And you could just see the looks on everybody's faces. They were so happy to get out there and go sailing. It was phenomenal.
Wooden boats still have a strong history in southern Chile. Before engines came about or were readily available, the fishermen needed boats that they could leave parked on the beach due to the very high tides. So they built these shallow keel sailing boats to travel from one island to another, allowing the boat to rest on its bottom in between passages. Many boats in Chile are still made of wood, but few still use wind propulsion. A handful of Chileans wish to bring this rich history back into light through this rally, sailing the Chiloe boats from island to island, providing sailing experiences to those who have never had the opportunity. The advantages to building wooden sailboats is the ability to make repairs with materials that are readily available, self-sustainability at its finest.
So we ended that day with yet another nice little cookout, and then we finally had to start making our way back up to Puerto Montt. These little Chilotes also made the adventure along with Swiruka across the Gulf of Ancud. It was a big, long sail, and I was really impressed at how these little local wooden sailboats handled it. So then we sailed into the town of Calbuco, which we had passed through once before on our way back up to Puerto Montt, and it was beginning to be the end of the time of single-handing because Kate was going to come back. So Roxy and I finally sailed back to Puerto Montt, kind of where this whole big circumnavigation began, to pick Kate back up from the airport.
Yep, it was time for me to head back to Chile after a wonderful time with family and friends. A very good refresher for me just to have some time to myself as well. No offense, love you. But yeah, it was a lot of stuff that I brought back with me. And we're gonna get back into that in the next episode. Let me start this over.
No, that's okay. Because guess what, guys? You hear the low wind alarm going off again. Our wind is starting to die just a little bit out here in the middle of the Pacific Ocean. And so we've got to start doing some active sailing. So we're gonna leave you guys off here with this. When Kate gets back, we're gonna show Kate landing, and then we're gonna show some really amazing things that we did in the next round to get our boat ready to go for this sail into the Pacific.
Yeah, all right. In summary, the next episode is going to be the last boat projects in preparation, a new sponsor, and talk about our route to go across the Pacific.
Okay, we gotta go sailing. Bye, guys.
Bye.